and on behalf of the Archdiocese of San Francisco, welcome to Mosaic. Today we have two guests, experts in bioethics, and we are going to talk with them about something that none of us can live without. Now, you won't think it's a joke, I hope, if I say that none of us can live without dying. It was a joke in the old Jackie Gleason routine when the straight man asked Jackie, "Have you lived your whole life in Brooklyn?" And Jackie answered, "Not yet." And that captures our situation. We're not there yet, but we will be. Now, 100% of us must die, and some of us, many of us, will accompany our loved ones to and through death. And a smaller group, a few of us, will be among the professionals, the medical and support people, whose vocation it is to aid and guide the sick and dying. How does any of us in any of these three categories approach these tasks? How discharge these great responsibilities? What do we need to know and understand and do? Important questions. And after this brief break, please join us for a Catholic conversation on death and dying. Hello and welcome to Mosaic. We're talking about death and dying, a serious subject with some lively people as guests. They're very entertaining and very interesting, knowledgeable bioethics experts. I'll introduce them briefly. Now, this is Vicki Evans. And Vicki, on your title, I put CPA and STL behind your name. You work as a CPA, that's your vocation, but I know that you're also a writer, a giver of workshops in bioethics and end-of-life issues. And I understand that you've got an advanced degree, which is STL, if I can say the Latin. It's Sacrae Theologiae Licentius. So you're a licentiate of theology. So you're an advanced person. And you are working with the Archdiocese of San Francisco. What is your title there?
I am the Respect Life Coordinator in the Department of Human Life and Dignity.
Okay.
So I've been there about 15 years, spent about 4 of those years in Rome getting my degree from Pontifical University Regina Apostolorum. And then I came back and now I speak on the subject.
Wonderful.
And end-of-life issues, beginning-of-life issues.
You're a wonderful colleague and hardworking. And then next to her is Dr. Thomas Cavanaugh. Tom Cavanaugh, graduate of Thomas Aquinas College in California, and then Notre Dame PhD in philosophy. And you're a professor of philosophy at the University of San Francisco.
Yep.
And your bio there says started there in 1994, so I can tell you I think it's 25 years.
Yes.
Coming up.
Yep.
Fantastic.
25 delightful years.
And it says you teach a first seminar course, What is Wisdom?
Yes.
That'd be interesting to take. An honors seminar in medieval literature. And you specialize, if I can say it that way, in medical ethics. Mm-hmm. You've written books on it. You have a new book, which I'm reading right now, very interesting.
Oh, thank you.
You studied the Hippocratic Oath and its place at the origin of the Western medical profession.
Yes, exactly.
So you are our experts, and I said this would be a Catholic conversation on death and dying. So it's not for Catholics necessarily, it's for everyone. I tried to paint this picture of a pyramid with 100% of us on the bottom level, all going to die, many of us on the next level, all helping others die, and then at the top, professionals who are working in this business. So I'd like to ask you this question. What do the Catholics have to tell us about death? What is the Catholic teaching for us? Why do we come to them?
Well, there's a very beautiful document promulgated by the Vatican in 1980 called Declaration on Euthanasia. Not a great title, but it's actually more uplifting than the title makes it sound. And the Catholic Church has an amazing body of knowledge around death and dying, and Catholic social teachings form the principles of what we call end-of-life care. The Declaration on Euthanasia goes through various points, very practical points, talking about death first of all. You know, death is a part of the human condition. It's neither to be feared and avoided at all costs, nor is it to be actively procured. So, you know, we know that's part of life. And by looking at some of the principles of Catholic teaching, we can see what the best way is to die, what principles are okay, how much medication is allowed, you know, what we should be doing and shouldn't be doing, how to help each other through deaths in a spiritual and physical and mental way.
And in your job, you do provide practical resources for people who need to know. To your website at the Archdiocese, all your resources there. People can study that. They can also talk to you personally and find out what there is to know.
Yes, we have a hotline, a medical ethics hotline that's actually on our website. And if anybody is having a problem, either with a relative dying, a friend dying, if they have a question about an end-of-life issue, they're welcome to call, and we can talk it through. It's very difficult to be at someone's bedside. Say you have an elderly person or a parent dying. Is the doctor doing this right? Are they withholding nutrition and hydration? Are they giving them too much morphine? Because you never know when you're in the situation whether or not you're doing everything right. And every situation is different, so sometimes it's good to have a little bit of backup.
I would think so. I think being prepared with the knowledge you may need. I mean, it's frustrating and confusing and portentous circumstances when someone is dying. And then, Tom, there's a question, I think, of a sort of higher order of philosophy or theology, understanding. What is it the Catholics supply there for us?
So I think the Catholic Church has a good message concerning death. That's kind of paradoxical, but the gospel is in Greek, euangelium, a good message. And the good message is that death is not the end of our existence. So in the Catholic theology, we distinguish between the first death and the second death. The first death is the separation of our bodies from our souls. And our souls are the principle of our life. They vivify us. So when our souls separate from our bodies, we suffer this first death. But that's not the end of the story. And that's the good news, the good message that the Church has to share about death. It's not all over. There is an afterlife. The soul continues to exist after death. Now, we're not that soul. We're the union of body and soul. The soul continues to exist after death. And the great good message, as it were, is when Jesus tells us, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he be dead, shall live. He who believes in me and lives shall never die. That is, that we will rise again from the dead, just as Jesus did. That's the good message that the Church has to share. And the second death is the one that we want to stay away from. That death is the separation of the soul from God, our source of life. And the Church offers us ways, means, sacraments of avoiding that second death. We're all going to go through the first death. Jesus calls that in the gospel, he says, of the little girl who had died. She had fallen asleep.
Yes.
She's fallen asleep. And they ridiculed him because they said, well, no, she's dead. But Jesus knows she's not dead in the second death. Her soul has separated from her body, but her soul is not separated from God. And at the end of our lives, the Church offers us the last rites.
Right.
So in the Church, we have the anointing of the sick is actually a sacrament in the Catholic theological tradition. We have a sacrament that anoints the sick. It can be used when we're not imminently dying, but it can certainly be used when we are dying. And we have the anointing of the sick, we have confession,
right.
We have the reception of the Eucharist. So all of these means are available to us so that we can die well.
Spiritual medicines. Thank you. And we will take a brief break now and be back in a couple of minutes to talk more about death and dying. Hello and welcome back. We're talking about death and dying. End-of-life care is what we call it now. We're talking about the medical practice and the personal practice of this inevitable stage of life, right? So I was reading the head of a Catholic healthcare group who wrote this. He has a story that says, my parents' deaths taught me about end-of-life care. One parent died hard, one died easy. And he says this, I've said many times, if we can improve the patient experience in the last 2 years of life, we will go a long way toward improving health care for people at every stage of life. And I thought, that's strange because the layman thinks that end-of-life care, medical care, could be a big waste of resources, could be a big waste of time, could go down, a sort of money pit in the last years of life. And he's saying, no, it's a time in which we can practice and learn new things that can help us throughout the medical practice. Does that sound right to you?
I think that when you're talking about preparing for end of life, it's always a good idea to have an advanced healthcare directive. We have a great Catholic healthcare directive on our website, and it's not only for Catholics. I think it's really good for anyone.
Sure.
And it takes up a few of the main questions that occur when people are dying. How much medication, pain medication, is too much? If you're given a lot of morphine, is that going to accelerate your death? The answer is, no one is expected to go through intractable pain when they're dying. And giving pain medication like morphine, as long as the intent is not to cause death. Here, intent is always the most important word. It's okay to give pain medication, even if theoretically it could reduce the lifespan of the person.
Right.
Another issue that always comes up is nutrition and hydration.
Right.
And artificial nutrition and hydration is considered necessary health care. It's not a health care procedure because you're eating and drinking. But I get a lot of calls from family members saying, well, I'm afraid we weren't feeding my mother or father. I'm afraid we weren't hydrating them enough. Did we kill them? There's a point at which the body can no longer assimilate food and water, when you get very close to the dying process. And so cutting off food and water is okay. It's morally a valid thing to do. But I think if you look at these advanced healthcare directives, particularly ours, it goes through these points very briefly, and it helps people think about, well, what do I want when I'm dying? If these are the parameters, then maybe I don't have to be as strict with myself as I would otherwise be.
And surely everyone should have one.
Definitely.
Is there some statistic about how many people do not? Majority of people perhaps don't.
I'm afraid, well, it's getting to be more and more people who do have them, but there are still probably over 50% don't, just because people don't like to talk about the issue, they don't like to think about it.
And Tom, let me ask you, because I think this gentleman is talking about a new way of patienting and doctoring, which involves more revealing of the patient's, more questioning of what the patient wants, needs, and who he is, so that you can prepare for this stage of life. And as the man says, if we get this kind of behavior as a habit, which we need to do at end of life, it can leak back into prior stages of medical care. Does that sound right?
It strikes me as remarkably similar to the literature concerning ars morienda. So
we don't speak Latin here, Tom.
The Art of Dying, and there are treatises in the Catholic intellectual tradition concerning the art of dying. And in those treatises, remarkably, they say that if you can prepare adequately for death, it will transform the way you live. So when this comment from this gentleman, this doctor, about the deaths of his parents, it strikes me as very similar to the experience of these thinkers, these theologians. Erasmus has one on it. In the 1400s, they began to be written in that time, around the time of Chaucer, where we have to. We're mortal creatures. We're going to die, and if we can maturely think about that truth about ourselves and how we want to do it, it's understandable that given that we are mortal creatures, that will transform our way of living. It makes perfect sense. And so the doctoring, if the doctor-patient relationship adequately addresses and maturely addresses the issue of dying, it will understandably thereby address medical issues associated with living. It just makes perfect sense to me.
I do begin to see that, and I saw recently a Catholic press published a journal for someone who is terminally ill to record, to confront the questions and to record things. But I thought, I'm pretty healthy these days, but I could open this book and do that now, and it would help me in thinking about what kind of death I want. I would get a better idea of what kind of life I want.
Because you always have to remember that people don't have to be hooked up to machines in hospitals. If There's no requirement in the Catholic Church or anywhere for you to be hooked up to machines at the end of your life. You can refuse any treatments that are extraordinary.
And it does seem that the doctors have a dilemma, or we all do, in that our medical care is such that, and we have such great tools that you can aggressively give more treatments at the end of life, or we now have the capability of ending life voluntarily, and this is, in the law these days. So the medical practice can divide along that place. We can do one thing or another, and it's hard to know what exactly is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we draw a boundary and we say, in the Hippocratic Oath we have, I will not give a deadly drug if I am asked, nor will I counsel this plan. And Hippocrates, that's a boundary. He draws a boundary. And then within the confines of that boundary, he practices the art of medicine.
Yeah. And
the art of medicine, you can excel in a practice only when one has a boundary. You can't excel, you can't become excellent at something if you have no boundaries within which to conduct that practice. And he lays that out.
And the goals.
So then we have
Let me just stop you. We're going to take another break and come back for our last segment, in which we'll talk about how we can learn more about these things. So thank you. Thank you. We'll be right back. Thank you for being with us. We're talking about death and dying. Now, to learn more, Vicki, you're putting on a conference in November 17th in San Francisco, you and some associated Catholic groups. Now, I noticed it is for professionals. You get continuing education units in your medical specialty, but also it's for the layman. I'm thinking of going. It's not a high price, and I think I may pay it. But it's a full day gaining knowledge in these very things we're talking about. Now, we'll run a slide here to show the flyer for the program. There it is. It's the John Paul II Foundation sponsoring. It's at St. Mary's Cathedral, basically. It's all day on November 17th. And to know more about that, you can go to our website. All the information is there. But Vicki, tell me, the title of the conference is interesting. Both titles, Converging Roads and the Heart of the End of Life.
Yeah, Converging Roads is where the medical practice and ethics converge, because they do, certainly. The title of the conference is The Heart of End-of-Life Care, Catholic Social Teaching. And as I said, the Catholics have a great body of social teaching underlying end-of-life care. If our viewers would like to learn more about it, we're having a conference that John was just mentioning, November 17th. We have speakers from all over the country. Dr. Cavanaugh is one of our speakers on the Hippocratic Oath.
Sounds good.
But we have speakers. It's for doctors and nurses because continuing education credits are available.
Right.
But it's also for the general public because these principles are going to be very helpful for yourselves, for your loved ones, for everybody towards the end of life. So we're looking forward to a good conference.
I really do want to come, and you've advised us we have to get prepared. It's serious business getting prepared for end of life, for ourselves, for our families, and so on. Tom, now let me ask you this question. What do you think we should all be doing to get prepared for end of life? Vicki's got a very practical side of things. What about you? What is the main thing we should take away from
I
this?
think what we're doing now is a model of what we should be doing, which is talking about dying.
In your
Talking
family.
about dying in our families. What good deaths have we seen? Have we experienced? What good deaths have we been part of? Why were they good deaths? What bad deaths? What deaths that went badly have we been part of? And why did they go badly? And what can we do looking forward to our own deaths and the deaths of our loved ones and friends and family
Well, I think
to
one
make sure
thing-
that those bad things don't happen? So sharing these stories with one another, I think, is crucial.
Vicki, you have a lot of experience. Do people just not talk about this? They just...
One way you can get them to start talking about it is when you're filling out the Advanced Healthcare Directive. The most important thing on that form is is appointing a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney for healthcare,
Yeah.
who knows your wishes, who knows your values, who knows what you want. And that is the most important thing that you can do. And as you're signing this and picking out your powers of attorney for healthcare, that's when a good conversation can start. And I think that's what Tom's talking about.
We're also upcoming on Halloween. And
Oh, yes.
Dia
Okay.
de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. So October 31st, November 1st, November 2nd, we talk about the dead, the people who are saints, and those who are in purgatory.
Yeah.
We can think about our loved ones, remember them, talk about the fact that we're mortal, and associated with that national holiday that we have, Halloween. It originally comes from the Irish.
Sure.
And the church has a lot to say about it too, though.
You know, and November in the Catholic Church is called Month of the Dead, and it's a time when you particularly remember the dead, pray for the dead, and re-involve the dead in your life so they're not forgotten. And that's important. So I'm going to concretize your suggestion and say, everybody, during November, sit down with your family and talk about your preparations.
Very good.
Why not Halloween too?
That's true. And even this detail, I think, because we recently had 2 funerals in my family, sit down and write what you want for your funeral service, what you want to happen, because otherwise the grieving people are kind of wandering and blowing in the wind trying to figure out what to do. So time to get ready. Interesting. And now, Tom, let's talk about your book also, if I may, for a minute. You're going to be at the conference.
Yes, I will.
November 17th. You'll have your book there. For
I
people
will
to
have my
buy,
book there,
so-
yeah. Hippocrates' Oath and Asclepius' Snake.
Hippocrates' Oath and Asclepius' Snake.
Yeah,
That's-
and we'll be having a white mass, which is a mass dedicated to medical professionals.
Right.
So after the conference, there's a 5:30 white mass at the cathedral, and then Tom's book signing at a reception afterwards.
That sounds good. To end
Nice
it with
way to end the day.
End it with the Mass and a book. Now, Tom, I am reading your book.
Oh,
There's some Latin and Greek in there, but it's
Yes.
really, really interesting. And give me in 30 seconds the gist of your book.
The gist of the book is that Hippocrates founds medicine as a profession by having an oath in which the physician makes promises to patients about how he or she will care for the patient and what norms the physician will honor and abide by. And that's a profession, to stand in front of other people and to tell them what you stand for and how you will conduct yourself before them and in your interactions with them. So Hippocrates really founds medicine as a profession, and we've come to think of medicine as a paradigmatic profession, but we've probably forgotten precisely where that initial conception began. It began with Hippocrates about 2,500 years ago.
That you're taking on an art in which you will stand up and profess your intentions and your goals and say so in public. I want to thank you both for being here. We'll be off in a few seconds. Vicki Evans, Tom
Thank you.
Cavanaugh, good luck in your work, and it's been great having you. Thanks very much for joining us on Mosaic.